Hello, and welcome to Money Talks, where I, Felix Salmon of Axios, and sometimes Emily Peck of Axios, talk to some of the most interesting and fascinating and wonderful and brilliant people in the world about awesome things. And today, I am talking to Mr. Matt Rodbard. Matt, welcome.
Hey, Felix. How are you, buddy? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Introduce yourself.
My name is Matt Rodbard. I am an editor-in-chief of Taste. I've written 3 cookbooks. I live in the Hudson Valley, and I think the West Side is the best side. Just saying.
Just saying. We are not going to get into which side of the Hudson Valley is better than the other. We are going to get into foodie things. Obviously, we're going to talk about Korean food, both in Korea and in the United States. We're going to talk about grocery stores. We're going to talk about the way they have evolved and what people are buying, how home cooking is changing. It's all over the shop, but it's going to be lots of fun. It's all coming up on Money Talks. Just so we get it out of the way, it's the most important part. Plug your podcast.
Yeah, so This Is Taste is the name of the show. And it's a conversation show. We talk to chefs. We talk to, personalities, celebrities about food and cool things.
And plug your book.
Korea World, my book was out this spring, and it's a follow-up to Koreatown. And we've been tracing the journey of Korean food's trajectory around the world for the past decade. And Felix, truly, it's been a culinary revolution.
So this is mostly a cookbook. It's not like a cultural disquisition, but it kind of doubles as that a little bit. I want to talk to you about how and why Korean food has had this massive worldwide, I wouldn't say, it's more of a surgence than a resurgence. It's not like it ever happened before. When did it take off and why?
Great question. When we wrote Koreatown in 2014, we were just starting to see this idea that Korean food was more than barbecue. And that was really what I said all the time when that book came out almost 8 years ago. And of course, the Korean diaspora has been part of American culture since the 70s. That's when the immigration really took off in places like New York City, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Georgia, Chicago. Those are some of the big Korean enclaves. But really, up until the past 10 years, Korean cuisine has been a for us, by us type of cuisine. Of course, we all have flocked to Korean barbecue restaurants because we love soju and communal dining. But it's only been the last decade where Korean food has really become this kind of wave that is run parallel with Hallyu, which is the Korean wave of culture that's taken over. We look at Minari, we look at Parasite, etc., all the pop culture and K-pop. But really, food has become this focal point for Korean American chefs who are wanting to cook food from the homeland, but also there's a reinvention moment happening both in Seoul and in America that we argue in Korea World is not just a Korean food movement, but a global food movement.
So famously, Thai restaurants in the United States were orchestrated by the Thai government as a sort of expression of soft power, and they got everyone eating Thai food, and it was hugely successful. K-pop, as we know, was similarly, part of a big sort of top-down strategic decision to export Korean culture to the world. This has happened with movies as well. So is that restaurants too? Is this driven by some kind of great high-level Korean bureaucrat somewhere?
I mean, Felix, let's get real. The first time I ever wrote about Korean food in a serious way was in a guidebook published in 2013, funded by the Korean government. So I've really benefited from this movement. And, I have to say about the Korean government, the Korean Food Foundation was the organization founded by the First Lady 2 administrations ago. And she had this idea that Korean food would be the great gateway to Korean culture. And she was right in many ways directionally, but I would say there were some flaws in the approach, meaning they really were being traditional and they weren't trying to market to Americans. But that really didn't matter. They were funding these guidebooks, which led to my first cookbook, which led to a lot of other events around that were funded by the government. So they kind of ran parallel with kind of Americans' changing opinion of Korean food. But yes, there was budget given to projects in America that helped benefit Korean food. Absolutely.
So let's broaden this out. Beyond the rise of Korean restaurants, what are the other sort of big food trends that you're seeing in the US right now?
I mean, this is such a great It's a rich text, Felix, because I love thinking about trend with taste. We publish newsletters and podcasts and articles that we really try to tap into these movements. And one movement I would say that really has stuck with me is this movement of the NA drink. And I feel like it's not just Athletic Brewing, which I'm sure your listeners know about, which is like this like amazing success story, great business case for NA. I'm seeing things like NA Tanqueray, 0.0 Tanqueray. Do you know about this product?
I have not heard of this. No.
This is amazing. And it kind of leads to this idea that I think we played around with things like Seedlip, which were like these proxy fake spirits that you put into, which I don't really buy.
Is there like a qualitative difference between Seedlip and NA Tanqueray? Have you tasted
I
NA
haven't
Tanqueray?
tasted NA Tanqueray, which is like, I literally read an article this morning about it. I'm like, I need to seek this out. But the NA gin movement, that's like by the big boys, even like 0.0 Heineken is better than you would imagine. But like products like St. Agrestis, Phony Negroni, to me, I've seen this product in menus in Los Angeles, in New York, in Chicago. And I just really think not just from a movement of like, not drinking sobriety, but as like a culinary movement, it's getting better.
So since this is Slate Money, I need to ask, when I go into bars, I am faced with an increasingly long and interesting mocktail list, which when I order them are really delicious and I'm almost always very, very happy with them. But one of the things that strikes me is that they are significantly cheaper most of the time than the cocktails. You know, if the cocktails are like $18, the mocktails will be like $11, something like that. And if it's true that the way you make these NA spirits is by, you know, taking alcohol, de-alcoholizing it, it's like more work. It would seem to be more expensive. How do they wind up cheaper? Is it just they don't need to pay tax on the alcohol?
My observation is similar in that certain NA drinks I've found to be cheaper, mostly the ones made with fruit juice and like seltzers.
We'll take a quick break and be back in a second.
Get 3% daily cash back when you use Apple Card to buy a new iPhone 15 or pair of AirPods at Apple. You can choose to grow it at 4.4% annual percentage yield when you open a savings account through Apple Card. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings and Apple Card by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Member FDIC. Terms and more at applecard.com.
Slate Money is sponsored this week by Burrow, which is a new kind of furniture company. It is known for its timeless design, thoughtful construction, and little details that make life in your space easier. And for a perfect example of the Burrow philosophy in action, look no further than one of their all-time most iconic pieces, the Nomad sofa. Its mid-century design meets modern convenience. It has a sturdy hardwood frame. It has galvanized steel hardware. It is solid. It is durable. It will last you for years to come, even if you want to put it outside. If you ever need to add a seat, if you want to make it bigger, if you want to make it smaller, or if you want to move your Nomad sofa to another place, you can disassemble it just as easily as you assembled it. No tools needed. You can pick the fabric style, the color, the arm style, the legs, and more. You can make it completely your own. You can even add an ottoman. You can turn it into a sleeper sofa. It has over 69,000 ways to personalize. I have a Burrow sofa myself. I have 2 Burrow chairs. They put together incredibly easily. They're very beautiful. And they're going to last me forever. If you also are interested in Burrow furniture, Slate Money listeners can get 15% off their first order at burrow.com/slatemoney. That's Burrow, burrow.com/slatemoney for 15% off. Burrow.com/slatemoney. There does seem to be a lot more price sensitivity in grocery stores than in restaurants. As a financial journalist, it is impossible for me to get away from people constantly complaining about the cost of food in grocery stores. While it strikes me that restaurants have become eye-wateringly expensive over the past couple of years, And because they don't feel like they're a necessity and that, you get to choose whether or not you want to eat out or not. And if you want to eat out, you get to choose how expensive a restaurant you want to eat out at. People don't get upset about the rising prices at restaurants nearly as much.
No, it's definitely not.
So tell me about the way that the experience of walking into an American supermarket has changed over the past 10 years. Are we seeing more young brands, like more weird stuff that might not be instantly recognizable to Americans? Is it more diverse and fabulous? Or is that just a kind of urban thing and you get out into, suburban America and it's the same as it's ever been?
It's a great question, and I love answering it because it really has changed. And I live in Orange County, New York, which is definitely not, as we're coming back to this point, it is the more workaday side of the Hudson River. And I really appreciate living there because I get to go to a Stop and Shop in my town, and I get to go to a cooler case that's filled with natural products. And really, natural products is kind of this catch-all for products that come from, I would say, a more of a CPG-oriented founder, or products that have a little more of a branding identity, or maybe disrupting a heritage category. For example, there's little sesame hummus made out of DC. You see that in the cooler case. You see Olipop, which is part of this probiotic soda movement. I'm just kind of like in my brain going through this cooler case in my town in random New York. And I think it's changed because we as consumers crave a little bit of a spin or change from the heritage brands. Like, for example, dairy-free yogurt is a huge category, and it's a lot of growth there over the past 5 years. And it's not just in the like Foxtrots and the Whole Foods in Soho. It's happening everywhere.
It does strike me that almost all of these new entrants into the market, the ones who are succeeding, whether it's David Chang or whether it's even like Rayo's pasta sauce, it kind of counts as a new entrant, are succeeding by coming in at a higher price point, by being the sort of luxury, more expensive, better version of what you could normally find in the supermarket. And I feel like that is part of the food inflation that people are seeing.
The prices being higher, of course. I think you're right. I think these are luxury goods in some ways. Like paying like $8.99 for a tub of hummus and Sabra's $4.99 is definitely a big delta there. So I agree. I also think that what's happening here is that these are smaller products, so margins are different when you're doing smaller runs. And I think that a lot of products aren't really at the scale that we think they are, and that creates this higher level of price and maybe a little bit of exclusivity. I think Grazia olive oil is a counterexample, to be honest. That's actually an olive oil that's cheaper than most of the big boy established brands. So you can like look at both sides of the coin. Are you familiar with Grazia? Do you know the squeeze bottle olive oil company?
Yeah, I didn't realize it was cheaper. I kind of like in my head, because also one of the other things is that all of these brands try and launch themselves in this, the term of art is DTC, direct to consumer kind of way. And when you're selling direct to consumer, you basically have to wind up eating a whole bunch of shipping costs that are massively expensive. And so if you're on the website looking at how much does it cost me for this bottle of olive oil, it always looks more expensive because the shipping is so expensive.
Right.
But yeah, I can totally believe you as someone who I can't remember looking at the price of it in a supermarket.
It's $17.99 MSRP, I believe, but you see it as high as $25 for like the big one, the sizzle, I believe it's called, and then the drizzle is more of like the spicier one. But I think one thing to talk about with Grazia, which I think is cool, is are you familiar with Fare, the platform that sells a lot of these boutique food products to like everything from like the hotel lobby of your favorite boutique hotel to Foxtrot, this large chain. I mean, like everyone, it's like the Shoppy Shop that Emily Sundberg wrote about like in New York Mag about a year ago.
Right.
All the Shoppy Shops are being supported by Fare, this decacorn of a company. It's like massive. It truly is. And it's really changing how it's like direct to consumer brands are getting into unique spaces through a platform that is frictionless and easy to use.
So we have supermarket aisles becoming much more interesting. Presumably that is now showing up in more interesting meals being cooked at home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think cooking of food is really we're at an interesting moment right now. Of course, inflation has created grocery costs at a higher level. So we're thinking about, is it worth going to the QSR restaurant? Is it over shopping and cooking a meal? You kind of crunch the numbers and it might be a wash.
Wait, what does QSR stand for?
Quick service restaurant. So that's like kind of like, I would say, in the realm of like the Chipotles of the world.
Oh, okay.
So I feel like right now, there's a couple things happening with home cooking. One, places like Hungry Root and even Blue Apron, which, is pretty cursed if you look at the stock price, but it still is out there. But like these boxes are still happening. And if you listen to a podcast, they're still happening. but really, they are helping democratize food. I'm a huge fan of them. And I think they actually create a more cost-effective way of cooking. But also the way we cook is changing. And this goes back to my hint of talking about media and how we look at recipes. I feel like right now we're at a real moment with the recipe. The New York Times Cooking has won. They have won the war. That is where you find your recipes. And listen, I work in book publishing and I have another I have another point to add, but I think right now New York Times Cooking has won. If you go to any of the free or even paywalled sites, and I'm not going to eat like the Dotdash, the Condé Nasts, the blogs, the ad tech sucks. It's terrible. That's why people hate food writing, because they try to find a recipe, they scroll down, and they get bombarded with bad ad tech. New York Times is clean. It's how we cook. So I think right now in food media, they've won. Anyone trying to chase recipe aggregation and SEO, good luck. I mean, Epicurious with the labor dispute happening there, it's kind of dead right now, which is kind of in a small, hasn't really been covered. It's there's no staff there anymore. That's for another podcast. I would say also that the cookbook is thriving. And of course, I'm selling a cookbook, so I'm going to say this, but I really have to check myself. There's lots of cookbooks happening. But really, talk about an affordable luxury. You get a cookbook, it gives you 75 to 100 tested recipes. It costs between $22 and $38, depending on where you buy it. It's tested, it works, it's all there, and you don't have to deal with pop-up ads. So I feel like right now we're in a moment where the New York Times has won. The cookbook is thriving, and everyone else kind of do food media in the recipe world, they're kind of struggling.
We'll be right back after this. Slate Money is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You are probably multitasking right now. You're doing something else. You're driving or cleaning or exercising or maybe even grocery shopping. But just so long as you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you could be doing, which is getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's super easy and you can save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts are having multiple vehicles in your policy, or being a homeowner, or more. So multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. Slate Money is sponsored this week by ZBiotics. There's now a game-changing product to use before a night out with drinks. It's called ZBiotics. Let's face it, after a night with drinks, it's tough to bounce back the next day. You have to make a choice. You can either have a great night or a great next day. ZBiotics is a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after a night of drinking. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Go to zbiotics.com/money to get 15% off your first order when you use money at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/money and use the code MONEY at checkout for 15% off.
Get 3% daily cash back when you use Apple Card to buy a new iPhone 15 or pair of AirPods at Apple. You can choose to grow it at 4.4% annual percentage yield when you open a savings account through Apple Card. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings and Apple Card by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Member FDIC. Terms and more at applecard.com.
So you literally work at Penguin Random House.
I do.
You have been in and around cookbook publishing for how long now?
I've been a decade. Yeah,
a decade.
Over a decade. Yeah.
So tell me, like, your experience of cookbook publishing over the past decade. Like, you're saying it's thriving now. Has it been thriving for the whole decade, or was there a point at which it was not thriving?
It's definitely been a good business, and there have been bestsellers. But as we know, you've put out books and worked with major publishers too. It's a hit business. So you got to have hits in the industry, and really the publishers that have the big hits win. I think it's been a good business. I think us as consumers are buying more cookbooks because we're seeing, like in Korea World, we're telling stories beyond the recipes. And I just think at a price level, I think it really comes down to that. Like, look at what you get for $22. You look at Cherry Bomb, which I love. I absolutely love that. Or the new Savour magazine. I absolutely love them. They're over $20 an issue. So if you're looking at indie publishing, they're charging $20 to $25. I think Cherry Bomb might be over $30. And you should buy these publications. I love them and I buy them. But I think in terms of, and because this is an economics podcast, it's such a value, the cookbook as a document. Has it been thriving for a decade? I believe so. I mean, I'm not privy to our final P&Ls. I can't speak to that. I'm on the editorial side. But I do know that people are buying cookbooks more than ever, and we're using them more and other, to my point of the ad tech really betraying us when it comes to finding recipes. Do you buy it?
Do I buy it? I'm not sure I buy it, because finding recipes in a cookbook is not that easy. I mean, we all know that experience of looking at your shelf of 50 different cookbooks and going like, what am I going to cook here? And picking out one of the 50 cookbooks and trying to work out where in that cookbook you might find something that you want to cook tonight, versus firing up the New York Times cooking app and having it very easily searchable and being able to change the quantities very easily and all the rest of it. I feel like the inconvenience of having to navigate web pages with heavy ad loads, which is absolutely real, is one thing that is driving people away from like the open web for recipes. I can see that. But also the inconvenience of trying to find that one page of recipe among 1,000 pages of cookbook that I have on my shelf is also a genuine inconvenience and will tend to drive me more to the ad.
I think you're right. I think there is a level of effort needed to navigate cookbooks. And I think if you don't cook in general, neither of them are going to help you. But if you are somebody who cooks 3 to 5 meals a week, which is myself living outside New York now, it's getting into that habit. I believe in the habit loop big time. And if you go and actually do a few times, you cook from the books, you put your stickies in there, you pull it out, and you like the recipe, you're going to keep going back to that book the way you would keep going back to that New York Times starred recipe in the recipe box. I think there's room for both. And I just think, honestly, it's like SEO has like betrayed us when you try to search for a bolognese recipe and you're given like some strange results. But I'm going to go and I'm going to have like, I think Ali Slagle has a great bolognese. I'm going to go to her book for one example. And just like, I think if you are cooking, you're going to like find the best way to cook. I believe cookbooks are really where it's at now. I think we use cookbooks. I buy it. You're not. I love it, Felix. I love it.
I buy it. I do buy it. And I guess my other question then is, if you're in that mode of, I am putting together this really interesting, exciting cuisine in my home with the aid of these exciting new ingredients that have now become more available to me. You know, some H Mart just opened up nearby or something. And now I'm like, okay, now I can go wild. I have these cookbooks. I'm getting excited about the new possibilities open to me. Does that then change the mindset of what in the olden days we Brits used to call home economics, which is basically the budgeting in the grocery store? And does it does the amount of money I'm spending on creating these meals become more of a discretionary thing like going out to a restaurant and less of a, oh my God, groceries are so expensive these days?
I think and especially younger home cooks, I think the globalization of our pantries in America have really changed the way we cook. I believe it fully. I think za'atar and harissa and gochujang, which you write about in our book, are like becoming common in the larder. I mean, that's not just a line. I just think it's there. And I think the way that cookbooks and New York Times Cooking and even BA and Saveur address the global pantry in creative ways is getting us to think about, I need to go buy a new type of tahini. Maybe it's Sum Tahini, great local company from Philly, or maybe it's another brand. And I just think the global pantry is driving us to make these choices. And like, it's like the ethnic food aisle is dead. Like that's like, we write about that all the time on Taste. Like it's not like this like area where only that's where you get your pad thai sauce from Maya Kamal or South Asian sauce from Maya Kamal. You are seeing it throughout grocery stores. You're walking into Trader Joe's, you're walking into Whole Foods, and you're seeing these products everywhere. And I just think it's like becoming part of our like habits of cooking to seek out not just the Western or the American products, but like the global products. And to your point, I think we do take a little more chance and risk now as younger consumers. I think we're just interested in taking that, and we love consuming these like hot products. Like, I mean, Fishwife's a great example. Like, I love tin fish, lots of different brands. I love Ortiz. It's like amazing Northern Spanish company that's been around for 100 years. But what they've done, Becca Milstein, the founder, is incredible and gotten people all over the country to buy tinned fish because of the branding, because of this like shoppy shop nature. And to me, there's going to be more and more of those products that I think younger consumers are just going to be driven towards.
And as we drive ourselves in that direction to a much more sort of global diet, a more adventurous diet, is it also going to become a more expensive diet? Compared to if you stick with your meat and potatoes, like, are you actually spending more by being more adventurous, or are you not?
I have to think about that because I think there's lots of products that I would call like less adventurous that are like $8.99 for certain yogurts. I mean, that's not adventurous. It just costs $8.99. So I don't think like being more adventurous. I think like if you go to H Mart, there's products that have like literally the price has been the same for a long time and the inflation hasn't hit like certain aisles.
The one thing I will jump in and say is like nothing is cheaper than MSG.
Truly. and really, I've written about this in another cookbook I wrote, Food IQ. You should be cooking with MSG.
100%.
And I love that you brought it up. I think the important thing, and this is not a home cooking show, but cutting it with kosher salt is essential. Do not just shake MSG into your food. Like it is a ratio. It's like 1/5 to 1/6 salt to MSG, or other way around, MSG to salt.
So what, 1 part MSG to 5 parts salt?
I think that's I'm like it's like 20% mix, I think. But yeah, it's a delivery. You can't just like throw it in. I mean, you can, but that's going to be the overpowering. I would say create an MSG shaker that's cut with salt. That's like its own little area, and then like make that your own salt like urn. That's like the half and half or whatever, and sprinkle that in and use it. I love that you brought up MSG, Felix.
And it's I buy it, I buy these pound bags of it, and we get through them slowly. But like
Speaking of MSG, can we talk about Taco Bell for a second? Is that possible?
100%. We'd love to talk about Taco Bell.
I think I wanted to bring another big trend to the show, and I think what Taco Bell is doing is really interesting.
What is Taco Bell doing?
From a couple levels. They just launched a chicken cantina menu, which to me, on a culinary sense, is really interesting. They're trying to mimic, I would call like East LA taqueria style, as best as they can. And one of their dishes is really, it's a flour tortilla, grilled chicken, and I would call it a more citrus-driven guacamole sauce. So it's like kind of like that guaco salsa that you get at great taquerias. It's like cut with like lots of lime. They're doing this in the little packages. That's one thing they're doing. So I think that's an interesting innovation. And also, they're doing something with content that's cool, and they haven't fully rolled it out, but they're having 3 young chefs rethink the Crunchwrap Supreme, which I think is like bringing in young chefs to rethink Taco Bell product. To me, it's just an interesting move by a company that innovates on the marketing side and the advertising side, and I think they're actually doing on the culinary side too.
And the reason why Taco Bell is so good is because they use a lot of MSG.
Yeah, that was the segue that I was thinking about, like the way they have co-opted Doritos and brought these like MSG-laden products into that in a genius sense.
If you are one of the last holdout MSG skeptics out there, just remember, if you like Taco Bell, it's because you like MSG. Okay, so on which note, Matt Rodbard, thanks so much for coming on this show. This has been a roller coaster ride through different countries, different types of cuisine, eating in, eating out, drinking, not drinking, and all the rest of it. I have a lot to digest. Thanks so much for having me, Felix. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for listening and for sending us your emails. The address, as ever, is slatemoney@slate.com. Many thanks to Jared Downing and Cheyna Roth for producing, and we'll be back on Saturday with a regular Slate Money.
Some people take the straight path in life. But at Arizona State University, we respect your twists and turns. They make our online students more driven to excel in their professional lives. That's why our personalized suite of services empowers you with innovative resources and staff that sticks with you. Make your next turn with one of our 300-plus programs at ASU, #1 in innovation for 9 consecutive years. Visit us at asuonline.asu.edu to learn more.